Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Chicken Box, the show where we say, don't be a chicken, get on the box. And so the box is a platform where you can share your opinions and fact-based research on topics important to Black people. It is a live show produced by the Afro-American newspapers, and so we're so glad you're here. Please do us a service and like and share this broadcast because here we're going to talk about stereotypes and dispel myths about the Black community. So grab your lunch, or as our usual co-host would say, your breakfast, depending on what part of the country you're in, your favorite beverage, and in the comments, we invite you to weigh in. So I mentioned our other co-host, Kevin Impeccable Peck. He's not with us today. He's our Gen X friend, but that's okay because today's chicken box revolves around the ladies. Ladies. And so I'm Frances Tony Draper. They say I'm representing the baby boomers, but I have a new title, Misha Green. I am a millennial baby boomer.
Indeed. Indeed.
Okay. All right. And Nisha, you are?
I am Misha Green, and I'm representing for the millennials. But because of my love for soul music, I'm going to call myself a millennial boomer as well today, because why not?
And you can be you'll be the boomer millennial, and I'll be the millennial boomer, right?
Okay, I love that.
Right. But regardless of labels, today's topic is exciting, especially with everything that's been going on. Today's topic is Black people versus female first, female first. And we all know that in this past week, we've had a lot of female firsts, from Vice President elect to the first female brigade commander of the United States Naval Academy, the first Black Mississippian to become Miss USA, and many others. This has just been a week of first. And so for today, we have a very, very special guest representing the Gen Zers. She's a 14-year-old journalist writing for Girl Refined magazine, and she happens to be my granddaughter, Blake. And so, Blake, just give us a real quick introduction of yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Blake. I'm 14. I'm from Texas. As my grandmother said, I'm a journalist now. Some of my hobbies I enjoy to do is hair, makeup, dancing, and baking. And I'm also on YouTube sometimes. And yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's great. That's great, and I think Blake Girl Refined magazine just published its first issue, right?
Yes, we published our fall issue in
So,
October.
all right. So tell us, because I know you're going to have to jump off because you are in virtual school, right? And you have a class
Yes.
about 10 or 15 minutes. So tell us about Girl Refined. Tell us how we can get a copy of the magazine and see your inaugural article.
So Girl Refined is a Christian magazine for teen girls and young adults. And it's basically, we talk about loving yourself, we do fun facts, we have fitness things that we talk about, fashion, and it's just a safe place for girls to connect to other people who look like them. So the way that you can get it is you can go to girlrefinedmag.com and you can see everything about the magazine.
Okay, so maybe we can put that up on the screen. That's girlrefinedmag.com, right? Girlrefinedmag.com. That's wonderful. Last time we saw you, Blake, on a broadcast was on an Afro show. You were one of our expert commentators during the royal wedding back in 2018. Remember, Misha, when Blake and a couple of other girls from around the country helped us do that?
Oh, it was amazing. Blake, thank you, first of all, for being back. We're so happy to have you. But yes, it was very early in the morning. I think we started at about 4 in the morning on May 19th, 2018, and we were speaking our British accents, and we had our tea, and we were in our royal wedding attire, and it was so much fun. And, you know, it was clear then that Blake had a career in journalism. So I'm super excited that is what she's doing now, 2 years later at 14. And I know that you're killing it for Girl Refine Mag, but we at the Afro are so happy that you remember your family, and I hope you come back and do some more with us as well.
Absolutely, Blake. So, Blake, here's the way the chicken box works. So we start off by giving our guest, and you're our guest today, 30 seconds to hop on the box and tell us how you feel. And by the way, if you are just tuning into this this live show by way of Facebook, please, we want you to hop on the box by putting your comments in the chat and or your questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. But Blake, we give our guests 30 seconds. And so this week, as I already said, our theme is Black people versus female first. Now, before we even get into the show, Blake, what do you think about all these Black women breaking barriers in the past week? And then you'll share, and then Misha and I will jump on the box as well.
Okay. I just think it's really cool to see someone who looks like us doing amazing things and being on TV, because I feel like nowadays we hear things that's like, oh, you can't do it because you have curly hair, or you can't do it because your skin's brown. But it's just cool that we see other people like us who are actually doing it. And it shows for like even people younger than me that when they grow up, that they learn about people like that now.
Okay, that like you said, it's cool. Misha, 30 seconds on the box.
I'm gonna have to use Blake's term as well. It is really cool. I am so excited, and more importantly, I'm empowered. But I think that the younger women who look like us will be super empowered as well. I loved what Kamala Harris in particular said, which is that she is the first, but she will not be the only, because she is showing that women who are minorities, or like Blake said, women with curly hair or natural hair, have the ability to be leaders. And particularly, I know that women of color, with my dogs getting into it as well, but women of color get a bad rep as leaders sometimes. And so I'm really excited that hopefully we will be proving people wrong these next 4 years and beyond.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about women in leadership in general, but women of color in leadership in particular. Let me say African American women in leadership. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to take my 30 seconds on the box, and my 30 seconds is going to be reduced to about 3. I don't know if the audience can see this. You can go on afro.com, but our headline, I think, says it all. Kamala. Yeah. And so we are so excited about having a woman of color as our first vice president elect. And, and there's no doubt about who she is, from her heritage to her HBCU roots to her Divine Nine roots, whatever way we look at it. She is definitely one of us. We could spend some time too talking about stereotypes. Misha, we're going to get into some of those, about how some people won't take the time even to learn how to pronounce her name, but they better get used to it, right? They better just get used to it, because her name is going to be, and she's going to be around for a while. And so we talked about stereotypes. Misha, what are some stereotypes in regards to women in leadership? Oh, Misha, we can see you moving your mouth, but we can't hear you.
Look at me on mute. I forgot that I had to silence myself because of my loud dogs. Women have gotten a bad rep when it comes to leadership in general. Not just Black women, but Black women get the even harsher stereotypes. And so we find that the angry Black woman stereotype that we've heard in many instances will come up in the workplace. People are concerned that it will carry into the workplace and in positions of leadership that they don't want Black women leading. It's a stereotype. And again, let me emphasize, these are solely stereotypes, not necessarily views of the Afro. And that's why we have this show, to talk about these stereotypes. Some people think that Black women are better at getting the job done, but not to be the leader. Black women have sort of created a rep of being workaholics, really hard workers. They will get the job done, but sometimes behind the scenes versus in front and as the leader. Black women sometimes have a rep of being unprofessional or stereotyped as unprofessional or too emotional. And women who are chosen as leaders sometimes are pressured to be attractive or very stylish and have things about them that are aesthetically pleasing to the larger cultural standards. So those are some of the stereotypes. I know, Dr. Draper, you have been a legendary, well-respected Black woman leader for years. So I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add to that, but that's sort of what I found in my research and experiences.
Thank you, Misha, and thank you for the shout out. I think I'm going to toss the ball to Blake because she has to get off in about 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 6 minutes or so. I'm gonna toss it to Blake and see, Blake, in your generation of Gen Zers, as you're called, what have you heard, or how do your friends perceive Black women in leadership?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How about in your age group? When you think about Black women in leadership, are there any stereotypes or any things that you've heard about Black women in leadership?
I haven't heard any stereotypes from my generation, or at least not from the people that I surround myself around, but I know there's definitely a lot of stereotypes that, even like negative ones that they'll be like, I don't know, like just, I don't want to say ratchet but like they'll just be like, they'll act ratchet and people just think that Black people can't be leaders, and it's like, I don't know, it's just a stereotype.
I think that's a perfect word because that's such a stereotype. And your generation, I think, is gonna have to face that and sort of combat that in a way that we haven't because of TikTok and social media. And it's like, in order to get sort of a certain level of respect, you kind of have to be ratchet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, on social media, but then you don't necessarily get that respect from professional crowds, etc. And so I think that was a perfect word, Blake.
Right, I think so too, Blake. And even though we're talking about female first and Black leaders and those kinds of stereotypes, I want to lift up that sometimes Black women are elevated at the expense sometimes of brothers too. Sometimes we're used against the brothers when we really are all in the same thing together. And so this whole stereotype about Black men and Black women and our relationships with one another, sometimes, yeah, that's true, but sometimes it is just perpetuated by media other than, not the Afro, but it's just perpetuated that way. And so, Blake, in these last few minutes, we came on to talk about, by the way, if you're just joining the show, let me say to those who are viewing, thank you for being here today. Come on, like this and share this so that we can have more people to participate in this important conversation. And as importantly, put your comments there. And so I know the comments have been flashing up on the screen, and so we do appreciate those who are joining us today. So Blake, one of the last questions I want to ask you before you have to hop off. From your perspective, from a teenage perspective, why is this election? We talked a little bit about it. Why is this election of Kamala Harris so important? And I know you talked about girls seeing, themselves, but are you guys talking about it? Within any of your friends talking about this, your teenage friends? I know you have a sister that's almost a teenager as well. What are you guys thinking? What are you all saying?
Yeah, we're talking about it a lot. We just talk about the fact that it's crazy that he chose a Black woman to be his vice president, and he could have chose anyone, but he chose someone who would represent our race well. But yeah, we've definitely been talking about it.
You've definitely been talking about it. Does it make you think about politics at all? Any of your friends think about public service and politics and being in public life?
I've thought about it, but I don't know. I don't I don't know. But yeah, I've definitely thought about it.
You definitely thought about it. So do you think a Black woman can be president of the United States? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right. That's great. So Sean Evans said this is great, and I see a couple other people have weighed in. So the comments, right? And so who is that? Donna Quarles says loves this. Dorothy Bullware says there are negative impressions about our hair and non-traditional names. Right, because Kamala is not a name that you hear every day, but it's solely a name that people are going to get really familiar with. And so, Blake, we want to thank you. We don't want you to be late for class.
Yes.
And so we know that you have to jump on a Zoom. We'll have to have another whole conversation with you and maybe a couple of your friends about how that virtual learning is really working out. You know,
Definitely.
and so
I love
definitely,
that.
so yeah, we'd love to do that. Blake, tell us one thing about virtual learning that you like and one thing that you miss by just being on a Zoom, and then jump on off.
One thing that I like is that I only have to worry about what I wear on the top half. I can wear leggings and sweats during class. One thing I dislike would definitely be not being able to see my friends during class. Most of them are in person now. I'm just in my room.
Okay, well, that's real. We're with you on just having to go with the top half as long as you don't stand up. Thank you so much Blake, for being with us on today. Have a good afternoon, class. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, Blake.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Awesome.
Wow,
She's
that was awesome.
uh,
So,
I am so inspired by Blake and her generation.
right, we need to do a whole show with the Gen Zers, you know, and just because they have wisdom, right, and they
Yeah.
will speak their truth, and so we appreciate that. And so, Misha, I'm going to ask you like a twofer, if you don't mind. So I want to know what the millennial generation's perspective is. I know you can't speak for the entire generation, but of Vice President-elect Harris. And then let's talk about this record turnout of the young people in this election. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think from all that I have done in terms of research, millennials and Gen Zers came out in record numbers for this election. Now, obviously, part of that is some of them were not old enough in other times. So, of course, it's going to be a record number, right? But I think in particular, millennials came out for because they're starting, first of all, they're getting older and they're understanding the importance of their voices and the value of their voice in helping our democracy and the growth of our democracy. And a lot of millennials, unfortunately, I think, saw the true sting of COVID-19 and the challenges that came from COVID-19 in a way that other generations did not see. A lot of Generation Zers aren't working yet. A lot of boomers are currently retired, right? But millennials are the ones who are working, who lost their jobs, who are essential workers, who are getting COVID-19 and dying, unfortunately. And I think the other piece of it is that a lot of millennials, as they're getting older, are thinking about not only their own lives, right? We unfortunately have a rep of being a selfish generation, but now we're having kids and families. And so you're thinking about those kinds of things. So I think that's part of why millennials came out and voted. And I'm really excited about that. And as well, I got to give kudos to the Gen Zers who not only I think have been more active in using their voice, but they're natural leaders and they're natural activists. So I'm really happy that they voted. And another caveat with them that I saw, which was really interesting, is because they are home, they voted more and really got to be more involved. Some even worked at the polls and things like that, volunteered as poll workers because they were there and tired of being in their mama's houses. So it's been, I think, you know, timing, I talked about this a lot in terms of the protests, and I still believe this. We would not have seen as many white people in the streets had there not been a pandemic. Let's just be real. But I'm happy that people woke up and got to the streets. In the same ways, who knows if we would have seen the voter turnout had we not been in the time we are, with the pandemic, with police brutality, and with people that, so almost 300,000 Americans losing their lives. I think that's part of it at this point. And I'm happy to see that young people took that seriously.
Yeah, people were definitely motivated and energized. Tom Morgan agreed with us. He said, yes, the millennials were there. And I want to believe that many of the millennials went on and voted in person, but the boomers, brought up the rear with the mail-ins, with the mail-in votes. And so I believe that, this was just a record turnout across the lines. And I know the brothers are getting a bad rap for some who voted for the Republican candidate. That's their right to do so. But what really I'm hoping is that the turnout will continue to go up, will continue to go up and up and up. And again, from the kudos to the millennials, kudos to the Gen Zers, the Gen Xers, all of us just pulling together, because I think we all want the same thing. And so this threat to our democracy now, with all of, throwing all the shade on the results and how it was done, I think it's going to divide us more, but at the same time, affirm that the process does work. And so we talked about Kamala Harris being the first, and we say that again, the first African-American, East Asian, woman of color, vice president-elect. But Misha, how about all these other firsts just this week amongst African-American women? By the way, if you just tuned in, this is the Chicken Box, and today we're talking about Black people versus female first, and so this has been just quite a week of that. And so, Misha, how about the others that we've heard about? We may not know them all, and so our viewers, if you know of some people that we failed to lift up right now, come on and put their names in the chat. We want to give them a shout out. Okay, Misha.
Yes, please throw people who we have forgotten in the chat. We'd love to highlight them. And let me just say, I've been updating this list regularly because I'm finding more and more. So kudos to all you Black women out there who are continuing to break barriers, who are continuing to say, hey, you know what? I want to be a leader, or I want to make a difference, or I want to use my voice and my platform, and you're doing so. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So yes, Kamala Harris was not the only person to break a barrier this week, but let's give her a little bit more shine first. She was the first ever woman, okay? Black, Southeast Asian, and multiracial vice president of the United States. Those are 4 already, and I'm sure there's more if we really break it down, right? She's probably the first member of the Divine Nine. We could keep it going. So obviously, the Afro has made no secret of the fact that we are totally excited about Kamala. But other than Kamala, she hired a Black woman, Corinne Jean-Pierre, as her chief of staff. And Corinne is Haitian American, another first. Sydney Barber became the first brigade commander of the U.S. Naval Academy. And Sydney is the first Black woman brigade commander, of the U.S. Naval Academy. And Sydney is sort of extended Afro family at this point. And so we are also shouting her on and cheering her on, and we're hoping we can get her on this week's or next week. So stay tuned for that, everybody. And I don't want to say her name incorrectly. I've been saying Asia, but it could be Asaya Branch. But she became the first Black woman to represent Mississippi and to become Miss USA. So this is huge because Mississippi has been in a crazy year, right? This is the same year that Mississippi decided to change their flag because of its Confederacy symbolism. And so in that same year, a Black woman, for the first time, represented the state of Mississippi in the Miss USA pageant, and she won. And so that is a really, really big deal. Manassas, Virginia, had their first Black woman Democratic mayor. Shout out to the DMV. That's right up the street from me, about an hour away. So kudos to Manassas. And Georgia, we got a tip that Shaveda McCamey is becoming or was elected the first Black female judge in Alcovy Judicial Circuit. And that includes Newton and Walton counties. And then Marcel Adams David became the first female and first Black Raleigh city manager. And like I said, I'm sure there are many more. So if you guys know of any, please let us know. We'd love to highlight those people. That's what we do at the Afro. And we love the community sort of serving as our journalists and our reporters as well, letting us know. So please, please, please update us. But kudos to all those women who I've mentioned and those who we missed. We are inspired by you as well.
Well, that's amazing. That's all in this week. Again, this is the Chicken Box. I'm Frances Tony Draper, publisher of the Afro, along with my millennial friend, as Kevin Peck would say, Misha Green, our DC editor, and she's over there in DC. Missing Kevin Peck this week. He is traveling as we speak, but he'll be back next week. And this is the Chicken Box, where you speak your truth. And so if you have a comment, come on and put it right there in the chat, because we want to lift up your comment. But you are right, Misha, this has been quite a week of first. In fact, the Afro, and I don't remember exactly which month it is, Misha, but there is in 2021, we're going to devote an entire edition to Black First.
It's February.
Is it February? Is it okay? But so the entire edition is going to be devoted to Black First, and so we really, want to know who we are. Some are known because the names are well known, but some are not well known. And so if you are watching and you know of a Black First, living or dead, amen, or whoever the person is, if you would send it to editor@afro.com, editor@afro.com, we want to start compiling those names and those accomplishments now. And listen, it doesn't have to be an elected official only. This person could be the first graduate of a particular school. They could be the first licensed electrician. I mean, I'm just going to run it, whatever it is. We'll have to verify it, of course. And so give us your email. We'll have your email address, but we'll want to know so we can get a picture of them and really showcase in one place as many Black Firsts as we can. All right, and so again, we thank Blake for being on the show. Misha, we thank you. Misha, we usually stop in the middle of the show, and this show is going to end a little earlier today because our guests had to drop off, and we could talk about this forever. But Misha, can you give us an Afro fact for this week?
Yes, I can. So this week's Afro fact is inspired by today, November 12th. And first of all, happy Veterans Day to all the veterans and their families. We really thank you for your service. And so the day after what we now consider Veterans Day was a day of Black injustice, because on November 12th, 1775, almost 2 centuries before we even had Veterans Day, General George Washington, we know he later became President George Washington, declared that no Blacks could enlist in troops and forbade officers from recruiting Blacks. Thus, Blacks were denied the right to enlist. Now, of course, eventually Blacks were allowed to fight, and we know that Crispus Attucks was the first Black man to die in the Revolutionary War. However, segregation remained in the armed forces until Harry S. Truman desegregated the military in 1948. Whew, that is a long time of just a major, major segregation and injustice to Blacks who really wanted to protect our country. And that's this week's Afro Fact.
Wow, fascinating, Misha. And I understand from some of my friends who are veterans, it was a long time before African-American veterans knew about the entitlements that they had through the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Like for buying a home and other things, they really didn't know all the details of that. And so today we're glad the service people know about those things. And we salute, as Misha said, our veterans, our veterans. They are revered today, at least by us. We know they're not losers and certainly not suckers, and so they're revered today. But there was a time, depending on where you served, some of the, like for those who served in the Vietnam War, did not get the kind of reception and love, and they still served. And many of them were very, very young. So thank you so much. So as we prepare to close this episode, as I said, we're going to close it a little earlier on today. As we do that, we usually close with something that we call hot grease. Now, what is hot grease? What does that mean? So this is called the chicken box, yes, with 2 X's, where you speak your truth. And we've said that over and over again. And as Kevin would say, if you're from Baltimore, you would know that a chicken box, you go to the window and you don't say 4 wings and a fry. You say, I want a chicken box, but the inside that box is 4 wings and a fry, right? And so our first episode, we talked about Black people versus fried chicken and all the myths around there. And every time we mention fried chicken, it seems as if people say, I'm ready to eat some fried chicken, right? And so it's time for the hot grease. And so that's the moment when the grease is getting super hot, when the chicken is getting cooked and crispy and the spices are really good, right? And so we're going to talk about this hot grease topic. Misha, do you really think it's going to be a different approach to leadership because of Kamala Harris, because a Black woman is in the White House? What do you think?
I don't know. I think I've seen so many TikToks and memes about this and think it's so funny when I've seen where a Black woman walks in there and like it's just cleaning out shop. And I think that's really funny. And I do know that Black women get things handled. We talked about that as a stereotype, but I think that it's very truthful. And so I think right now we've been in a place of complacency at times, and in a place of saying, maybe that there are these issues, but not really addressing in a way that I think is useful. And my biggest example of that is the COVID-19 pandemic. From all that we know, it seems that the president and vice president were very briefed as to what this pandemic could be. And so my thought is that I cannot see a Black woman getting a briefing about COVID-19 and it being handled the way it was handled. And so in prophecy / I know my Black ladies land, I think there will be a change. But I know it's really difficult. I mean, we saw with Barack Obama, just because you're the leader of the free world, there's still a lot of hoops you have to jump through. And so because of that, I am not positive. But I think that we'll see at least a bit of a change than what we saw in the past 4 years.
I agree with you, Misha. I'm going to get on the box for about 30 seconds. I think we've already seen a change. The briefings that Joe Biden has held so far have been led by Kamala Harris. She's introduced him. I mean, we didn't even hear Mike Pence's voice until he was named head of the coronavirus task force. Hardly heard him, didn't know, knew how he looked, but didn't hear his voice. But starting out the gate, we have Kamala Harris not just saying, now, ladies and gentlemen, here's the president-elect, but she's actually saying something substantive at the beginning, right before she introduces him. So I think there is going to be a tremendous difference in leadership. And I also think that she's ready. I think that some of this pushback against Biden wasn't against Biden. It was against the thought of a Black woman is going to be possibly be the president one day of these United States of America. So I think there was some pushback there. Anytime you have a sister that's not afraid to wear her Chuck Taylors,
yes,
okay, and be who she is, unashamedly Black, I think that you'll see a different style of leadership all the way across the board. And so I'm excited to see how that plays out. And I'm hoping that our audience today and those who follow the Afro, that we will do what Joe Biden is asking us to do and Kamala Harris is asking us to do, and hold them accountable. Black people really showed up, showed out for this election, and it's not good enough to say thank you. That's another whole show, but I'm on the box right now. They have to show it. They have to do it. Not talk about getting around to it. We've been getting around to it for a long time. Not giving the excuse that we don't have control of Congress, and we didn't even talk about that, Misha. The importance of these races in Georgia for the runoffs. That's another topic for another show. But regardless of what happens in Georgia, even though I want my buddy Raphael Warnock and Ossoff to come away victorious, they're going to have to produce. Democrats cannot continue to take us for granted. And then we do what we did last week to be told, here's a little token over here. And so I'm hoping that, I know that we're the Afro going to hold people accountable, and I know our viewers are going to hold them accountable. Y'all, it's time. It's beyond time for our elected officials to really keep their word as it in regard to what are you doing for the Black community and creating some wealth in the Black community. All of us are not looking for a handout. Mm-hmm. But every single person needs a hand up, and a fair hand up. So what you do for your buddies over there in terms of business, it's got to be fair across the board. But I say it's more than fair. We can get into this whole conversation about reparations. We got some catching up to do before you can level the playing field. So that I'm off the box. I'm off the box. Misha, any closing remarks, Misha, because we're getting ready to end this segment of the Chicken Box in just a few moments. Anything you want to say? You got the last word.
I just want to say I so am inspired by your words, and I do think that this will be our job as the Afro as well to hold these our new leaders accountable. But I also want to say thanks to all those who are tuning in. You guys are chiming in and have a lot of great perspectives. Continue to hold us accountable as well, and say what you want to hear and the issues that you want to be addressed. We have to have our ears to the community, but we want you all to serve as our community reporters and journalists as well. And so thank you for tuning in, but hold us accountable as well. Oh, Reverend Buller says community. Yes. We also need you to nominate community activists under 30. And that's both in Baltimore and DC. We know that they're out there. We know that you know about them. And we at the Afro are trying to highlight them. So please, if you know of community activists under 30 that you think that should be highlighted, we are doing so at the Afro. Please email us at editor@afro.com and put in the subject line, community activists under 30. We will definitely try to get to you and highlight that person.
Okay, thank you. One last thing. I said the last word for you, Misha, but I would be remiss if I did not ask those who are watching, please go to afro.com. Please go to afro.com, sign up to become a subscriber, which gives you membership privileges for less than what it would cost for a month's worth of Starbucks or whatever we buy. We want to remain relevant and viable, but we need your help. And too often, and I've been guilty of this, too often we take our African-American institutions for granted that will always be here. There are fewer than 200 Black newspapers now left in the entire country. And that's abysmal when you count the number of media outlets that they are. And so we don't want our voices silenced. And so I'm not ashamed to ask you in fact, I'm honored to ask you to subscribe. So afro.com. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dana's in the background. Thank you, Dana, for helping us to produce today's episode of the Chicken Box. I know she's gone on to class, but kudos to Blake Evans, a 14-year-old journalist. So go to girlrefinedmag.com and check out Blake's article. And Misha Green, always good to be here with you. And thanks to everybody who has tuned in today. See you next week. I'm Frances Tony Draper, and this is the Chicken Box. Take care. Bye.